Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available for those who are registered through the usual channels. If your mic is on, just please mute it. We're going to save questions for the end. We don't want to run more than 30 minutes, and that includes questioning, so we don't want to keep you very long. We'll have time hopefully at the end for questions. If you think of any questions, feel free to use the chat or Q&A option, which should be available if you want to write them in during the presentation, and we can go through with time at the end. So you're very welcome to this is the second webinar that we've hosted about the Horizon Europe funded STRAITS project. My name is Ross McGill. I'm the project manager with the LOX agency. And presenting today with me as well as Dr. Kim Burney-Galvin from the Danish Technical University. So just to remind people, this is a European Research Executive Agency funded project under the Horizon Research Innovation Action. We began in January of 2023. We're now over 2 years into the project. And today is just basically going to be a run through of some of the main achievements, what we're learning, lessons learned. And the second half of the presentation will be Kim diving a bit deeper into some of the data from our first full data harvest across this European-wide project. So Kim, can you advance the slide, please? Okay, so also just to remind people, this is a 10-partner project spanning all across Europe, the 4 corners of Europe, as well as a Canadian partner, the Atlantic Ocean Tracking Network. Next slide, please. And our goals at the start of the project, which remain with us, were to coordinate aquatic animal tracking and environmental observation at a continental scale that had never been seen before, using telemetry and other sensors like passive acoustic monitoring and environmental sensors integrated into the arrays. This was all done with the main effort to expand biodiversity management, as well as developing data management plans and standardizing the way that data is ingested, incorporated, and applied through these large-scale projects. All with a view in line with the wider European tracking network vision of a permanent large-scale infrastructure for animal tracking across Europe. Next slide, please. Okay, so the purpose of the project, why STRAITS? Well, aquatic animals, as we know, are constrained by borders the same way humans and other terrestrial beings are. So to understand these species, we need to track them at an appropriate spatial and temporal scale. So there was a need for coordinated tracking efforts. Acoustic telemetry, as people probably know, has been used to varying degrees of success in coastal, estuary, and freshwater environments. It hasn't really been done at a very large scale. Canada has done it really well at a large scale. We have an Australian network that has been doing it. South of Africa has also large scale. But really what we want to do is try and do a pan-European wide coordinated effort to see what the results could be and how feasible it might be going forward. So the timeline, as I say, we started in January of 2023. The project finishes in December 2026, so we're just over halfway through the project. And today is the second webinar. We had a webinar at the start of the project within the first year to let people know what was happening. And what we're covering today, just to be clear, is activities and data that has been collected from the beginning of the project to the end of last year. So basically almost the full 2 years of the project where we had synchronized data harvests. Next, please. So just a quick run through of achievements before I hand over to Kim. We've instrumented, if I could just remind people to shut their mics off, please. Getting a bit of feedback, thanks. We successfully did instrument and maintain 4 large-scale arrays, and we'll show you the map of where they were and what went out. This included multi-sensor integration, so it wasn't just using acoustic telemetry. We also had passive acoustic monitoring, thanks to the efforts from the Atlantic Technical University in Ireland. And we also have had successful integration of environmental sensors on the arrays to contextualize the data. There's been over 1,000 animals tagged just by the consortium, by the project consortium alone. Again, Kim will go into further detail about the species and the numbers. And we've had more than 500,000 detections of tagged animals. 9 external projects have been involved in one way or another. And as we'll get into as well, we've had dozens of unmatched tags, which again further highlights the need for more of a coordinated effort and involvement from more researchers in this field. To our knowledge, we have had the first sunfish acoustic tagging program. Maybe somebody might want to correct us on that. But that was done in around the Gibraltar area, so we'll hear about that. We also had a guitarfish tagging program, not the first, admittedly, but that was unique to this project. And we've had successful collaboration with local fisheries, which has also helped in the deployment and maintenance of the arrays and getting specimens for tagging. So that has been a good highlight for us and a good lesson learned. And a particular external project or effort that we've been involved in is the International Committee for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna, ICAT. They focus now, because of the efforts in Straits, on tagging specimens with acoustic tags for the first time, and you'll hear about some of the results of that. So that's been very beneficial for everybody. But a project of this size and scale has not gone without its challenges and hiccups along the way, as you'd expect. I'm sure you probably could have guessed at some of these before the presentation of the project rather started, but there might be some on here that you didn't expect to see. So we're about transparency and we're about sharing these lessons learned so that people can avoid making them in the future if it was a mistake, or put things in place to mitigate the risks. We came up against a lot of complex licensing, as you can imagine, coming across delivering this sort of infrastructure at scale across multiple jurisdictions. This led to some delays in some instances. There were multiple ministries and people you had to get permissions from, but we overcame them when we got the gear in the water across the 4 main areas. Fishing interference. So this map, I think coming up, illustrates in one particular area, the Gibraltar Straits, just how busy of a shipping lane and a fishing area that is. And again, that limits the time when you can go out, the health and safety issues, and the risk for gear being lifted accidentally. So that also was sort of mitigated with the collaboration with the fishers in that area. Of course, equipment challenges, wear and tear. These are some of the most hostile, challenging environments on the planet. So biofouling was an issue. Gear being just battered about, getting a lot of abuse was an issue. We had data delays, again, because of some of these other delays. It knocks on when data can be harvested, because we have to physically go out and lift the receivers and download data for them. So the synchronization of data is also an issue to think about. Limited vessel availability. I don't know if other researchers on this presentation right now have come up against this, but it seems like the ability, unless you own your own vessel, it can be very difficult to procure them and get them exactly when you need them. And also the cost of even diesel and things has gone up since the start of the project. We had an interesting incident in Gibraltar where a manufacturer delivered the wrong spec of buoy unbeknownst to the customer, one of our project partners. This led to some buoys failing. The flotation devices weren't depth rated to the right depth, and it meant the gear was recovered eventually, but again, a delay in where detections were picked up in that part of the line. So hats off to IEO and Spanish partners for doing this well. Strong currents, difficult conditions. Again, very strong currents, depths of over 1,000 meters in some of the arrays. This is a challenging environment to work in. So the gear has to be right and the setup has to be right. So that's a run through of, highlight show of our accomplishments for the last 2 years and some of the challenges, which we can talk about later in the presentation here. I'll hand it over to Kim now. who can dive a bit deeper into the data and take you through some more of the highlights. So I'll hand it over to Kim. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Ross. I'm just admitting the last few people. It's a bit hard to manage the slides and that at the same time, so I apologize. Yes. So I think many people who are here today are interested in finding out a bit more about the data. What is it that we have actually managed to collect in the last 2 years or so. So just a bit of a recap. These are the 4 arrays that that we were able to put out in the water. But of course, the presentation today covers the period of January 2023 all the way to November 2024. But of course, not all of the arrays were in the water for that entire length of time. So just it's kind of important for maybe the number of detections that we have. So the Danish Straits were actually in the water since maybe 2018 or 2019. And so that array was in the water that entire period. Then we had the Strait of Gibraltar. There were some tests, so a few receivers were out kind of earlier in 2023, but the full array didn't go out until November 2023. So we have maybe a year or so of like solid data that we'll be talking about today. Then the Turkish Straits, which are in orange here, went out in August 2023. And lastly, the Sea Monitor array went back out in April 2024. And by the November 2024 deadline, which is kind of where we drew the line for today, we had very few receivers, let's say, downloaded. And so that will kind of come into play in a few slides when we talk about detections. Of course, we didn't just track fish. We also monitored cetaceans and underwater noise. And we had promised in the project to do so for one of the arrays, and we actually managed to do that for all 4 of the arrays. We have not analyzed that data in depth yet because it's very data intensive, and we're still, or the analyses themselves are very intensive, but we're still kind of collecting that that data. And what ATU, the folks at ATU, what they've managed to do so far is a little bit of digging into the data from the Strait of Gibraltar. And they had stations in the Strait of Gibraltar, but also kind of leading into the strait. And so far, the results seem to indicate that there's much higher sound pressure levels in the Strait of Gibraltar than outside. And as Ross showed a few slides ago, there's a lot of shipping activity. So perhaps that makes sense, but there will be a lot more coming out of this. Monitoring for cetaceans and underwater noise in the coming months. So the fish and the detections. We amassed more than 500,000 detections, and I should say these are filtered detections, or not just raw detections. They're actual fish detections in the period of, again, January 2023 to November 2024, and that represents more than 1.2 million hours of tracking. So I think that's a huge number, right? We have receivers in the water actively listening for tags for more than 1.2 million hours. And for each of the arrays, so we have the Turkish Straits, we have 61,000-ish detections. The Danish Straits, we have more than 300,000. The Sea Monitor array, we have 113. Again, very few receivers were downloaded by then. And the Strait of Gibraltar, more than 100,000 detections. We tagged nearly 1,000 animals from 13 different species. So the major species so far anyway have been Atlantic salmon, bluefin tuna, and sea trout. But we also have bluefish, blue crabs, spiny dogfish, meager, ocean sunfish, European eel, and then a few species that you can see listed on the top right, including some sharks and some guitarfish. I will say these are all tags that have been put out by the Straits Consortium, so the people involved in the Straits project, but they are not all funded by the Straits project. So many of these tags have actually been bought through other projects, but have kind of provided an add-on to the Straits project, and in the same way the Straits project provides detection data for those tags. So it's kind of a win-win situation. Looking at the actual detections. So for the Turkish Straits, the primary species of interest was the bluefish. So that's the only species that's been tagged there so far. So evidently, or perhaps unsurprisingly, most of the detections are from bluefish. But there is actually, and I'm putting it in bracket here, there's at least one individual bluefin tuna from the BFTDK project, which is a Danish bluefin tuna tagging project that has been detected nearby. And ITACH and his team in Turkey, what they've done is actually to put some receivers around tuna cages. And those receivers, so they're not real Turkish Straits receivers, but they still kind of contribute to our understanding of fish movement in that area. And so it's pretty interesting that we have at least, one tuna tagged all the way in Denmark being detected there. And I will say also, if you see any abbreviations or asterisks in yellow, these are external projects. So they are projects where the tags come from an external project, not from Straits, essentially. And we give a shout out to these specific projects. So you'll see that as I go through the slides. And then there's also 13 detections from 2 unmatched tags. So we don't know what fish they are, who they belong to. So this is kind of my first appeal to you in the community. If you are tagging fish, particularly, of course, acoustic telemetry, please consider adding your data to the ETN database so that we can, of course, match these detections. The Sea Monitor array. So again, that array had not been in the water for very long and very few receivers had been downloaded, but still 81 detections from 14 Atlantic salmon. So those salmon would be leaving the river on their way to sea, and they pass the array. Then interestingly, there's also 2 detections from 1 bluefin tuna, again from the BFTDK project. Maybe it was bound to happen. I mean, we know tunas are in Irish waters, but it was slightly unexpected, I guess, for the folks who tagged bluefin tuna in Denmark. So that's exciting. And then there's also a basking shark that has been detected in that time period from the C-Max Hebrides project. In the Danish Straits, we had several hundred detections from sea trout, again from an external project, but that external project was local to Denmark. So these trout were moving from Denmark across the Danish Straits into the Baltic Sea to feed. Then we also have many, nearly 1,500 detections from 22 eels that were tagged in the Baltic Sea. And these were from 3 projects, the BEM project, the SEM project, and then another unnamed project. So that's the Baltic Eel Migration Project and the Swedish Eel Migration Project. So there's a huge effort right now in the Baltic Sea, tagging a lot of eels and looking at how they migrate out of the Baltic through the Danish Straits and then out to the farther Sargasso Sea. Yes, then we have many detections from bluefin tuna. This is maybe not that surprising given that these tunas are tagged up here, and I should say they're tagged by Denmark and Sweden, so the BFTDK and the VFM-BFT projects. So the fish are tagged up here, but also down here. So rather close to the arrays, and so maybe it's not that surprising that there's that many detections, but still lots of tunas are being detected over there. Interestingly, there's also a couple hundred detections from several Baltic sturgeon that were tagged in Germany from the Baltic Sturgeon Restoration Project. And what's interesting about these guys is that they are detected on all of the arrays. So typically most of the fish are actually detected in the Sound, and then there's a few that are detected here in the Great Belt, but very few fish are actually detected in the Little Belt, but the sturgeon seem to be roaming everywhere. So that's kind of exciting, I think. There's also a sea bass that was detected from very far away that has made it all the way to the Danish Straits. And then we have 1,500 detections or so from 15 unmatched tags. So these tags are, they could be any number of species, but again, just another appeal from my side to put your data in ETN if you're tagging fish with acoustic tags. These might be some of your fish, I guess. The long-awaited Strait of Gibraltar. We're going to start with blue crab. So a couple hundred detections from 6 blue crab. That's an invasive species locally. So there's trying to get kind of an understanding of what's happening with that invasive species and how it's moving around. More than 500 detections from 6 ocean sunfish, and considering there's only 22 that were tagged, it's pretty cool. And I think we're going to be gaining a lot of information that we currently don't have about their migration and seasonality of movements. Many thousands of detections from Meager, from 27 individuals only. So that's quite a lot of detections per individual. And interestingly, this is including the B Corp project, and that project has actually ended years ago, but the tags are still active, and so that data is still being collected. And then we have more than 80,000 detections from 104 bluefin tuna. And these tunas, of course, some of them were tagged in the Straits project, so they were tagged locally in Spain and Portugal. But 84 of the detected individuals actually come from the BFTDK and the VFM-BFT projects out of Denmark and Sweden. And then 6 individuals come from the Fish and Tell project. So I think within, only a year or so of data, having more than 100 bluefin tuna is huge. I think it's more than we could have hoped for the first year, but I think it's just really kind of showing the potential that having these arrays in the water is, the potential that has for our understanding of how species move. And there's also nearly 3,000 detections from 17 unmatched tags. These could easily be bluefin tuna. We'll get into that in a few slides as well. Perhaps from Europe that are not in the ETN database, but also perhaps from North America, for example. So quite a few detections here that we would really like to match with their owners. And we haven't done any kind of in-depth analysis. It's still quite early, and I think each of the arrays, as we collect more data, we're going to want to dig into this a bit more. But we wanted to give a bit more information about the when and the where these fish are being detected. So in the Turkish Straits, again, the only species that has been tagged there is the bluefish. Hopefully there will be tuna and I think sharks that will be tagged there shortly. But the bluefish are primarily detected in March and April. That seems to be when the fish are moving around. So maybe some sort of seasonality going on there. The Sea Monitor array, the Atlantic salmon were detected in May. That makes sense, right? Salmon leave the river in the spring typically, and then they're going to see their movements are very directed. So they are passing, everything is kind of done in a short amount of time. The bluefin tuna was detected in July. So likely as the fish maybe migrated back from the Mediterranean after spawning, maybe on its way to Scandinavian waters, perhaps. And the basking shark was detected in October. For the Danish Straits, there's a little bit more going on. But if we start with this yellow, which is the bluefin tuna, the detections actually start in July. And they go all the way to, there's a few detections in December, but primarily it's August through to October. So that seems to be kind of the hot period when these detections or the tunas are there. And that lines up really well with what we know of bluefin tuna in the region. The Baltic sturgeon are also kind of September, October period. So kind of a fall movement that we are observing. In green, we have the European eel, and European eels typically leave rivers end of fall, beginning of winter. So maybe, these detections here would be eels after having left the river and passing the Danish Straits on their way to the Sargasso. There's some detections in July. I'm thinking that's either a lazy eel or an eel that found some other place to hang out for a while. The sea trout were detected in June, so similar to salmon, the sea trout were on their way to the Baltic Sea to feed, and so their movement is very directed, so the period of time when we detect it is very constricted. And then the unknown tags actually start in October, and they go all the way to February. So we don't know, I mean, these in theory could be tuna, but it's a bit kind of later in the season, so they could be other eels, they could be other species that we're just not aware that are being tagged or simply just not in the database. But we would love to find their owners. And then for the Strait of Gibraltar, we have, again, in yellow, the bluefin tuna. So primarily May and June is when we are detecting them, likely as the fish come into the med and leave the med for spawning. And you'll notice that the darker yellow down here are the unknown tags, the unmatched tags. So this lines up pretty good with what we see from bluefin tuna. So there's a good chance that these are bluefin tuna detections from bluefin tuna's tagged elsewhere, potentially even North America. The meager are detected throughout the year, pretty much maybe not in May and June, but otherwise are detected fairly consistently. And then it's pretty difficult to see the sunfish and the blue crab, so I've added these dots to actually show when these fish are detected. But sunfish seem to be kind of a summer and fall movement, and the blue crab is a bit less obvious. There's a bit kind of summer and fall, and then also a little bit in February and March. But this just gives us an idea of kind of the when and where these fish are being detected on the arrays. And there will be definitely a lot more to come and a lot more in-depth analyses in the coming months and years. So we're doing a lot, and this was really just a really brief overview of the data that we've been able to collect. We are collecting information on bluefish movement. This is a really important species economically for Turkey. So, and given that in Turkey they've been able to also put out an array that's like a multi-sensor array, they'll be able to hopefully connect movements with environmental data. We're still learning things about Atlantic salmon. We're collecting a lot of data on bluefin tuna, because the tags that are put on these fish are typically much they're much longer lasting than most tags. They can last, 7 to 10 years. We'll be able to get potentially things like natural mortality rates, which are really difficult to get from wild populations, but also just behavioral repeatability. Are the fish doing the same thing year after year? Are they detected in the same places? Do they move at the same time? This is the kind of information that we can start to get at. And I think that's information that organizations like ICAT would be interested in finding out. There's data being collected about the escapement of European eel from the Baltic Sea. There's currently a huge effort in the Baltic Sea, both for eels, but also just to kind of get acoustic tracking off the ground there. It's like a mini ocean out there, and there's still lots to find out. Lots of data being collected on the movement of meager, some detections on basking sharks, some exciting and perhaps surprising data on the Baltic sturgeon as well. For the first time, at least that we think, in terms of acoustic telemetry, we are learning things about sunfish, so repeatability of movement, migration, seasonality, that sort of thing. And then, of course, we're also still monitoring for cetaceans and underwater noise. So there's a lot going on. And again, this was just kind of a brief overview of the first year and a half or so of the project. But with this, I would like to say thank you to you in the audience for being here. We tried to keep it short. And of course, myself and Ross are privileged that we get to talk about this project, but there's a huge team of people behind this project, the entire Straits Consortium. There's been a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. It hasn't been easy, but the project team has really kind of come together to overcome these challenges. And I think this is what the tracking community is really good at doing, and especially through kind of a system like ETN. So I just want to give a big shout out to those folks who are, of course, behind all of this. And lastly, I just want to give a big shout out to all of the external projects whose fish we actually detected. We are, happy that we've detected these fish, but there's a huge team of people behind all of these projects that also deserve to be acknowledged. So the Baltic Sturgeon Restoration Project, the BEM, BFTDK, CMAX Hebrides, the Fish Intel, the Herring Trout Denmark project, the SEM project, and the VFM BFT project. There's also an additional project that's unnamed, but just I guess a thank you from the whole team for allowing us to show a few of these detections, and also just acknowledging all the hard work that was put into this. So I think I'm going to end it here, and we'll open it up to the floor. If you have questions, there are people from each of the arrays in the audience as well. So if you have questions specific to the arrays, there's the people here to answer them.
Thank you very much for that, Kim. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask by the traditional old-fashioned way or through chats?
No
Okay,
questions. Oh, wait,
no
actually
questions.
there
Oh,
is.
there is one.
May I start? Because I think that I'm the only one actually.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious. Hello, Kim, because some of you I already know. I'm wondering, so you finished with the tagging and you're just now continuing actually with the recordings of detections, or you still have some tags to put in the animals? So I'm curious about that, nothing particular, but more like, are you
The
still
next,
ongoing related to tagging process, or you're just now collecting the data?
yeah, the next steps in the project is that the arrays have all been redeployed, and they will continue to be in the water for the next 2 years until the end of the project in the last half of 2026. So we'll have another data harvest in the autumn, winter of this year, 2025, a redeployment, and then another final data harvest scheduled for the end of 2026, and a final report and everything. So that's what's happening in terms of the actual deployment timescale. And we would always encourage more people, if they want to put tagged fish in the water and get data from our arrays, now is the time to start planning and doing that.
And I think just to add to that, not like we don't know for sure what's going to happen, right? Funding is a huge thing in terms of maintaining this. It's not cheap. But I think for the most part, the intention is to work our hardest to keep these arrays in the water for as long as possible, which could easily mean that they stay in the water, after the Straits project has ended in one way or another. I think Kim Alstrop is in the audience and he can maybe shoot me down here, but I think the Danish Straits are there to stay. I think the Sea Monitor array is probably there to stay. I think the Gibraltar, we are going to work very, very, very hard to make it stay. And I think it's the same in Turkey. So I would definitely encourage people to tag. I can't make promises, but I would strongly encourage. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think Mike Stokesbury has a question.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much, Ross and Kim. That's fabulous, and what a tremendous amount of work. So we all really appreciate that. I take it that your acoustic receivers are all 69 kilohertz, and I'm wondering if they're all outfitted with infrastructure to detect tags from like Thelma and Nova Sea and any other manufacturers. Can you just talk a minute about what the detection ability is?
Yeah, so all of our arrays are OP enabled. So they will detect essentially anything on R64K and OP tags. I think the Turkish Straits and potentially the Sea Monitor can detect encrypted because they use Innovacy receivers. The other arrays will not detect any encrypted tags at all. Yeah. So
Okay.
unless you're using encrypted tags, your fish will be
Yeah.
detected, is essentially the short answer.
Super. All right.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much.
No problem. So there's a question I'm just going to in the chat about if there are any plans to add more areas in the medium future. We would love to. I don't think we are in the position to do it ourselves, but I think the whole team are happy to assist people, whether it's like applying for funding or figuring out, what the best way to do it is. We have the skills, we have the people. So yeah, there's lots of other important swimways that should be or would be nice to instrument within Europe. There's a paper from 2018 by David Abekasis that identifies several of these arrays. So the Strait of Messina, for example, the English Channel. There was a huge effort with the Fish and Tail project in the English Channel, but having a permanent array there to detect all passing fish would be great. So there's definitely options, but the funding is the problem. But we're happy to assist.
It's worth reaching out if people have ideas about how to instrument new areas or expand and improve other areas that where tagging and deployments have taken place, because we see this as a way to leverage in more funding. So as Kim mentioned earlier, some arrays are secured to be deployed beyond the life of Straits. Some are in the sort of question zone. But for the time being, the next 2 years, we know what's confirmed. And if it can leverage in more research money, well, that has proven to be true already with extra tags and things that have gone in the water. So what we're trying to do is form, an expanding network that can feed off itself and just improve the amount of fish that we're able to tag and share data about. So it is worth having the conversations.
Yeah. Rob, I can see you have your hand up, but there's a question in the chat so they're asking, since tagging work requires specific skills and training, I was wondering if there are any training initiatives or capacity building programs in place to encourage and support more people to get involved in this important field. So a few things to say there. ETN, for example, has launched travel grants. Hopefully we get more of them and we're able to support students in the coming years for like attending things like training workshops or just research experience and that sort of thing. But outside of that, we have a very competitive, a highly capable team of people, let's say, to teach people. And so if you are tagging a specific species or you would like to tag a specific species, get in touch with those of us in ETN who tag those species and just see what's possible. I mean, we have people from Germany come and see us to learn to tag animals pretty frequently. We're down the road. So we always, I mean, this is just my experience in Denmark, but I think generally speaking, just get in touch with people. We are all happy to help. We'd love to help. We want more people to get involved in that field, and we certainly want to give the opportunity to more people to get into that field. So yeah, there's nothing organized in terms of like a workshop yet. There have been in the past through ETN's cost action. So hopefully we have more opportunities to make this happen at some point, but funding wise within the Straits project, I don't think that's a thing yet. But my answer to that would just be to reach out to people. I'm sure that experience can be acquired one way or another. And Rob, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if people are keen to build new arrays that complement the Straits arrays. Is there any way to get access to receivers or build out new infrastructures in Europe?
May I answer? There are some intentions for the Adriatic Sea, but still, I mean, we are looking for some call related to, well, it is Interreg actually, call, which is launched now. So we are working on it for a few years ago, but yeah, there are intentions, but we will see how we will be successful in that. And also there is also potentially in the Black Sea. I was on the workshop and there are people who would like to be involved, but we will see how successful they will be to find the appropriate call for their region related to financial, first of all.
Yeah, there was a lot
conditions.
of interest at the last Straits webinar from the Black Sea, trying to get some programs started. Whether maybe it's not kind of a some crazy array in the Black Sea, but just maybe tagging a lot of the same species like across the different countries and kind of an effort to bring things together. So that would be great. And I've heard that I think around like, Italy, like Strait of Messina, I think has been tried, maybe not yet, but hopefully in the future. There's right now, I think there's a pretty big effort also in the Baltic Sea. Just trying, I mean, it wouldn't be so much like a, you know, a swimway, like one array, a gate, but just having kind of a bigger network in there. I think there's some effort going on there.
Related to the Adriatic Sea, we already reached ETN. So a few of the people are informed, like Jan and yeah. So I mean, there is something ongoing, but I cannot, I mean, promise that we will be successful. So that's it. But definitely you will be informed, because I touch and is also informed about it.
Good. Yes.
Admit it, you cannot pronounce my name. Eh?
I'm afraid of mispronouncing it. Sorry.
Thank you. This is Hüseyin
Hello,
from
Hüseyin.
Turkey, and I'm the coordinator of the Black Sea for Fish project of GFCM. So there are intentions to do additional taggings and putting new receivers along the Black Sea coast, hopefully in Bulgaria and Romania and towards more eastern part of Turkey. And the target species are pike dogfish, and hopefully in a newly starting straight project, Interact project, there will be sturgeon tagging. We are in very close contact with iTouch, and we are also pushing the national mechanisms in Turkey to strengthen the network around the Turkish coasts. So
Right.
any information needed from the Black Sea side, we are usually in the loop, and we are making sure that iTouch is in the loop. And I'd like to thank to iTouch from here. And I'd like to congratulate all the group. I think you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And yeah, I agree. iTouch is doing a heck of a job in Turkey. So we're very happy that yeah, that things are, you know, that the right people are getting involved. I think it'll have a huge impact for aquatic species. So thank you.
And I'd like to give the information that my colleague Emre is in this meeting, and any information regarding cetacean tagging, pike dogfish tagging, and sturgeon tagging. Emre is GFCM's consultant, kind of chairing this type of, leading this type of activities. You can directly reach him as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any more questions in the chat.
No. Does that leave us to wrap things up then, Kim?
I think so. Oh,
Um,
Rob would like me to mention the OTN loaner program. So OTN is the Ocean Tracking Network. I don't know if everyone here is aware, but it's essentially the big brother to ETN, maybe is a good way to put it. It's based in Canada, but they have a loaner program for receivers, so you can apply to essentially borrow some of their receivers to use them for your own work. So it's great if you maybe don't have the funding for receivers, but maybe you have the funding for tags. Then you can maybe either build a bigger array or just build the array that you need. So I would encourage to reach out. The application is fairly straightforward and is a great team of really experienced people also to work with. So Rob, I hope that was good enough.
that was a
Oh,
good
and it
talk.
includes 600 open protocol enabled receivers, which we support here in Europe.
A lot of those are sitting on the shelf waiting for somebody to want to loan them. So I don't know why there hasn't been a large demand for those receivers, but they're looking for a home in Europe.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably a good place to close it off for now. A reminder then, just that we are going to be continuing to deploy the arrays. All 4 arrays are currently still deployed. I should correct, Gibraltar is going to be fully deployed by June again, but each of the 4 areas has some equipment in the water at the moment, if not everything. And we'll be doing another data harvest at the end of this year again, probably with another follow-up like we've just done this time next year or sooner. And we'll have a final reporting and maybe an event at the end of 2026. Also, in addition to this recording that will be made available for people who weren't able to make it, we'll also be publishing our technical reports that we've produced for the funder. Those should be publicly available by the Q4 of this year, so the second half of this year, if people want to learn more and do a deeper dive into what's been happening.
I mean, you can also, I didn't put it up on the slides, but we are on all the social media. We post a lot of updates, and of course, feel free to email us if there's any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much for everybody who's attended. We really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing from you guys in the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Tuesday.
Yeah.